My relationship with Sean and John Huston, the director.
That's right.
We had a wonderful time on that. And Sean is one of my closest friends.
I loved your speech last year when you got this award.
I loved yours too, Michael.
Did you? I didn't make one, Sean. I wasn't here. I was working. And ladies and gentlemen, I would like to take this opportunity.
Despite his immense fame from his portrayal in James Bond, Sean Connery was notorious for keeping his private life out of the limelight. Despite his magnetic on-screen demeanor, he reportedly struggled with personal issues. The fact that Sean Connery's close friend Michael Caine has been mute about the suspicions around him for years makes winning this honor problematic. In an effort to shed new light on the man behind the myth, Michael Caine has chosen to speak out about the actual James Bond. Has Michael Caine's account put a stop to speculation about his buddy? Or has it only served to heighten public interest in his storied past? Come with us as we investigate Sean Connery's true identity and examine Michael Caine's claims in further detail. The actor had a humble beginning as a Scottish bodybuilder before he became the adored James Bond. His on-screen persona was at odds with his real-life struggles, yet he maintained his reputation as an affable, self-assured guy. He allegedly kept this aspect of his life under wraps because he felt it would stir up too much controversy. There were whispers about his character and how he didn't live up to the macho James Bond reputation when he wasn't on screen. Despite nearly losing out on the role, Sean Connery became James Bond in 1962. The Bond series author Ian Fleming originally wanted to cast someone else. Nobody recognized Connery back then, and some were against casting a Scotsman in the role of a traditional English spy. In fact, he was assisting a buddy with a relocation, and he almost missed an audition as a result. Connery worked tirelessly to dispel the doubts of the studio executives who had doubts about his appearance and establish that he was the ideal Bond. Seriously, he had to stand up for it independently. Michael Caine and Sean were great buddies for half a century. After Sean passed away, Michael revealed the truth about his friend. He spoke up about Sean's battles with stardom and how they caused him to seek solace outside of Hollywood. How did Sean Connery go from being a poor actor to a superstar? What propelled him to stardom, obtaining the role of James Bond or something else entirely? The actor Sean Connery came into this world on August 25, 1930, in Edinburgh, Scotland. Thomas Sean Connery was named after his grandpa by his parents. The building where he spent his childhood at 176 Fountain Bridge has since been demolished. His mom, Effie, was a cleaner by trade. The surname came from his mom's family in Fife, where they were originally from a hamlet named Ceres. Joseph, his father, was a truck driver and industrial worker. James, his great-grandfather, was an Irish wanderer, and his grandparents, who were his father's side, emigrated to Scotland from Wexford, Ireland, in the 19th century. A portion of his mother's family spoke Gaelic from areas like Fife, while the remainder of his family had Scottish ancestry. His mom was a Protestant and his dad was a Catholic. He was short for his age, but soared up to 6 feet 2 inches by the time he was 18. Teenagers referred to him as Big Tam. When he was in the company of his Irish companion Seamus, people liked to call him Sean, rather than Tommy. Connery began his working life as a milk delivery boy for the Edinburgh Co-op St. Cuthbert's. He had memorized every street on his milk route and proceeded to astonish a cab driver at a film festival many years later by naming each one. Both his parents' names and his passion for Scotland are deeply ingrained in the tattoos he received when he enlisted in the Royal Navy at the age of 16. He was released from the Navy at the age of 19 due to stomach ulcers, an ailment that ran in his family after training with guns in Portsmouth and serving on HMS Formidable. Connery put in a lot of time and effort from the start. But how did a street boy from Edinburgh, who appeared to stumble into stardom, become one of the biggest cinematic stars of all time? While still a teenager, Connery worked out diligently with Ellington, a former British Army fitness instructor, after discovering bodybuilding. Some sources list his Mr. Universe finish at #3 in 1950, while others put it at #53. The exact year is up for discussion. After becoming tired of watching American opponents concentrate only on gaining massive muscles, Connery decided to retire from bodybuilding. He wanted to be different from them. He wanted to be athletic and healthy. Connery started working as a stagehand at the King's Theatre in 1951, in need of some additional income. He heard about the South Pacific auditions during a London bodybuilding exhibition. From his humble beginnings as a chorus boy, he rose through the ranks to a greater position and a weekly salary increase from 12 to 14 shillings by the time the production made it to Edinburgh. Thanks to the show's success, it was renewed the next year, and Sean Connery continued to rise through the ranks until he succeeded Larry Hagman as Lieutenant Buzz Adams. Connery was so strapped for cash that he had to babysit for a journalist named Peter Noble for 10 shillings per night on top of all his acting jobs. Shelley Winters, an actress, thought he was stunning when they met at Noble's house. During this time, he even slept over at the house of TV presenter Lou Gardner. After that, his agent got him a part in Witness for the Prosecution, a play that earned £6 per week and opened doors to more acting roles. Connery has been seen in several works, including Anna Christie alongside Jill Bennett, Point of Departure, and A Witch in Time at Kew the Back in Oxford. At this period, he also formed a close friendship with Ian Bannon, another actor from Scotland. He was able to land the job of a lifetime, which altered the course of his life irrevocably thanks to all of this experience. Despite his initial reluctance to commit to many films, Connery saw landing the part of Bond as a career booster, and it altered everything for him. Dr. No, From Russia with Love, Goldfinger, Thunderball, and You Only Live Twice are the 5 films, 1962, 1967, in which he played the role of James Bond. Returning for 1971's Diamonds Are Forever and 1983's Never Say Never Again, he briefly left before making a reappearance. He was so good at playing James Bond that the American Film Institute named him one of the greatest cinema heroes of all time, and the films he appeared in were all commercial successes. If it weren't for Dana Broccoli, who persuaded her husband Cubby to give Sean Connery an opportunity, we would never have seen him as James Bond. The part of the dashing spy was too tough for Sean Connery, and even Ian Fleming was against casting him at first. But Fleming decided to give Connery a go when Blanche, Fleming's lover, said that he had charisma. Fleming was so taken by Dr. No that he changed Bond's family tree so that Bond's father was Scottish. Director Terence Young shaped Sean Connery into James Bond in 1964 with his book You Only Live Twice, in which he teaches the actor everything from table etiquette to how to walk and talk. Connery became one of Hollywood's most famous figures, the cuff around the ear, almost Victorian gentleman, after Dr. No was released, thanks to Young's guidance. He got hundreds of fan letters every week. Following the 1962 release of Dr. No, the James Bond film series quickly rose to prominence. Perfectly paced and collected, Connery spoke Bond, James Bond first, then his last name, and then his initial name again. He looked down at his enemies while smoking a cigarette in his tuxedo, and those 3 words had an air of both menace and allure. Nevertheless, Connery's connection with Bond was intricate, despite that cold appearance. The actor's charisma and innate talent gave him the 007 character he is known for today, even though he never attended acting school. His portrayal of James Bond as sleek, lethal, and as calm as ice set a new standard for espionage. His performance catapulted the films to international stardom, and before long, every action film actor was trying to emulate Bond. However, there was a cost to fame. People would always recognize him as James Bond, regardless of his past assignments. He would always be known as My Name is Bond, James Bond, because of his role as the fictional figure. Despite his best efforts to shed the 007 persona, spectators still couldn't look past the tuxedo-clad spy. Over time, he became exhausted from this continual relationship and felt stifled by his own achievements. He did not despise playing Bond. He just didn't want the role to define him, as he stated in interviews. It was draining to keep up the Bond persona throughout filming and beyond. Witnessing Connery's anguish with being permanently cast as 007 Michael Caine was there. Though the part catapulted him to stardom and fortune, it stifled his growth as an actor. How did Sean Connery accept the part that made him famous? And what did he do to cement his place in film history apart from James Bond? His long-lasting friendship with Michael Caine, which extended well beyond their shared love of Hollywood, provides the key. They stuck together through thick and thin in a field where friendships tend to be short-lived. They shared triumphs and tragedies, and helped one another deal with the spotlight. Connery was the reserved introvert, while Caine was the gregarious extrovert, but they understood one another on a profound level. It was bittersweet for Caine to see his friend become James Bond after both had climbed from poverty. Even while the part propelled Connery to superstardom, it also meant that people were always staring at him. The chances that Bond gave Connery were ones that most actors could only dream of, but Caine remarked that Connery was thankful for them. They were actually united by their shared contempt for the narcissism prevalent in Hollywood. With Caine by his side, Sean Connery was able to weather the storm that Bond threw him into the spotlight that first night. When the pressure got too much, Connery told Caine he wanted to be an actor, not an idol. Instead than passing judgment, Caine only listened. Indeed, that is the essence of true friendship. Their 1975 film, The Man Who Would Be King, was a joint effort between the two pals. The weather was terrible in Morocco, making for a long day of filming. Connery reassured his companion that they would go through the storm together, as the rest of the crew worried about the approaching storm. Observing Connery's composure in high-pressure situations further enhanced Caine's affection and regard for him. "By the way, I really enjoyed your acceptance speech from last year," he reminisced. In spite of Connery's decision to flee Hollywood for the Bahamas, he and Caine maintained regular contact, talking over the phone about family and life's little joys. Connery was like an elder brother to Caine. He was there for him no matter what. He always said that Connery showed him the importance of being there for one another through thick and thin, and that is just what they accomplished. How did Connery's legacy impact subsequent generations of performers, and what caused him to finally depart from Hollywood? Caine finally cleared the air on his friend's exit from Hollywood, putting an end to years of speculation. He wished for the public to see Sean Connery for who he really was, rather than the one the media had painted him as, a demanding and tough actor. Caine claims that Connery wasn't being demanding. Rather, he really believed that everyone should give equal attention to the job as he did. His obsession with perfection manifested itself in ways unrelated to acting. During a contentious Playboy interview he conducted in 1965, Sean Connery made disturbing statements endorsing violence against women. In response to questions on the matter, he said that there are times when physical force against a woman is appropriate, arguing that it may be necessary if all other alternatives had been explored. He would be tormented by these comments for decades. Despite attempts to clarify his position in a 1993 interview with Vanity Fair, Connery maintained his earlier remarks that physical violence could be justified in certain situations involving provocative women. "Well, if you have tried everything else and women are pretty good at it." Connery, 1987, interview with Barbara Walters. As a result of his statements, many of his admirers began to doubt the authenticity of the charismatic performer. In addition, flashbacks of his problematic former marriage arose. His ex-wife had accused him of mental and physical abuse in her 2006 book. In 2006, he even skipped a Scottish Parliament appearance because of the reaction he endured as a result of these discoveries and his previous inflammatory remarks. It was too late. He had previously informed the Times of London that he was totally against women being abused in any way. The real Sean Connery was a tangled web of scandals, notwithstanding his magnetic movie persona. Were these comments the only thing that made him leave Hollywood? Or was there more to the tale? In 2006, after collecting a Lifetime Achievement Award, Connery formally retired from acting. he had had enough of Hollywood and said he no longer approved of the industry's practices in filmmaking. In 2007, he joked that he was enjoying retirement too much when asked about reports that he could be back for another Indiana Jones picture. "I vow to do all in my power to earn it except retire," he joked in 2010. A bronze bust of him was even constructed outside their Scottish club by fans in Estonia. Once again, he made an appearance in 2012, this time as a voice actor for a Scottish cartoon named Sir Billy. He also contributed to the creation of an extended version of the show. But then, everything came crashing down with his last picture, The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. In their never-ending spat, Connery went so far as to say that filmmaker Stephen Norrington ought to have been put up for being insane. The picture flopped with reviewers and audiences alike, despite his editing efforts. Connery felt he had had enough and stopped pursuing a final hit. He finally decided that the pressures of Hollywood weren't worth it, so he left without a backward glance. He was very forthright in a subsequent interview about his belief that Hollywood was governed by complete dimwits. Rather than pursuing easy money through remakes and sequels, he did commend George Clooney, Steven Soderbergh, and Sean Penn for their continued efforts to produce excellent pictures. He stopped taking part in million-dollar transactions and bemoaned how Hollywood had evolved since his youth. Michael Caine verified that his friend departed due to his intolerance of Hollywood's insincerity and persistent deceit. In search of solace from the hectic life in Hollywood, Connery and his wife uprooted and relocated to the Bahamas. What more undiscovered stories does Michael Caine have about the man known as 007? How does Connery's love for art redefine his legacy? The fact that Connery had a deep love for painting is mostly unknown. Once he was no longer bothered by the paparazzi and the masses, he would go to his house and spend hours upon hours painting. Painting, he revealed, was like acting in that it let him tell his own story without the constraints of Hollywood. Museums weren't his final destination. His paintings were meant to be intimate reflections of his inner life. They showed a guy who was content with contemplation and grateful for the little things in life. His intimate friends knew the shy, contemplative side of him, even if the world only saw the dashing, handsome spy. Painting was a refuge for Connery. It gave him an outlet for the highs and lows of his life. He was able to express himself fully via painting, according to his wife Micheline. The untamed beauty of Scotland was his favorite subject to depict. His artwork, according to Micheline, are his silent confessions that he uses to convey his emotions in a non-verbal way. Sean Connery was just a regular guy at heart, a lover of his wife and art, behind the famous Bond persona. His authentic self shone through in all of his endeavors, from painting to spending time with Micheline. His fame never inflated his ego. These less-known facts about Sean Connery show that he was more than just a rough guy. He was a family man who never lost touch with his heritage. What additional private details did Sean Connery maintain, and how did they influence the actor we know today? Even though he was immensely famous, Sean Connery had a simple existence, loving his wife deeply. Red carpet events were not his thing, so he opted to read instead. Connery also maintained a journal to help him keep track of his ideas. Michael Caine said that the actor wrote daily entries on his life, his celebrity, and the things that were actually important to him. Despite their secrecy, Connery's journals revealed a man who was always thinking about things outside his celebrity. Caine gets choked up talking about his buddy, who was an actor and a man who never wavered from his principles. It was always Connery's decision to live life on his own terms, whether it was escaping Hollywood at the peak of his stardom or choosing peaceful family time over the spotlight. He deftly handled his celebrity and, in the end, moved away when he wanted silence. Connery still had to overcome obstacles despite all the praise. Many questioned whether he had found true happiness after leaving Hollywood. Despite his acceptance of a more sedate lifestyle, he suffered from an undisclosed emotional illness. Like everyone else, he battled with self-doubt underneath that imposing demeanor and famed grin. Connery finally found the serenity he sought after stepping away from the limelight, but he did not enjoy his latter years. Their relationship was troubled because, despite their love for one another, they were both too proud to put aside their pride and work through their disagreements. Micheline, his wife, took care of him alone while Alzheimer's disease ate away to his identity in his final years. She refused to let anyone else aid him, so he may die with honor. She cherished every second she could see the familiar affection in his eyes, even as his memory vanished. Just as he had desired, Connery passed away peacefully in his sleep on October 31, 2020, away from the mayhem and hospitals in Hollywood, where he had spent his last days with his family. After Connery's death, several of Hollywood's finest actors paid tribute to him. All of the James Bond actors, Robert De Niro, Hugh Jackman, Harrison Ford, paid their respects. The makers of James Bond films praised his depiction as 007. Michael Caine recalled him as an exceptional friend and an exceptional performer. In 2004 and 2011, he was named Scotland's Greatest Living Scot and Greatest National Treasure, respectively, as a mark of his honor. He remained irresistible for decades after his 1989 and 1999 Sexiest Man Alive and Sexiest Man of the Century titles from People magazine, respectively. Connery co-starred with Roger Moore as 007 more times than anybody else, and Moore was also a Bond actor. Time magazine named James Bond the most important cultural figure of 1965. Bond mania had spread by then. Would fans remember Sean Connery as a talented actor or as a problematic celebrity? Was he escaping his own scandals or the changing face of Hollywood that drove him away? Feel free to share your opinions with us in the space provided. To see more videos like this, use the like, share, and subscribe buttons.